and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'm going to be planting up a new plant of mine. I've got 3 of them. They're actually a variety that I've been wanting to get for quite a while, but this variety of petunias can be a little bit tricky to find. So this is the petunia with the variety called Night Sky. It's quite an unusual one. It only came out about 3 years ago, and you can buy the seeds from only a few seed suppliers, and also the garden centres often don't sell them as individual plants. They normally sell them mixed in with a hanging basket or something, so they've always been a little bit tricky to buy. But I managed to get my hand on some this year. Another reason they're a bit tricky to get is if you can't get the seeds, the plants, when they are available, they're not available for a long period of time. It's normally just the month of May here in the UK, and if you don't get them in that month, then they're hard to get. And the seeds are easier to get, but as I say, there's only a few suppliers. So they're quite unique because they've got this speckling. Now my camera, for some reason, shows this up as blue. It's actually a very intense purple colour. For some reason my camera always seems to struggle to show purples properly. So what I'll do is I'll show you a picture now. I'll adjust the colours on the computer to make it look like what it actually looks like in real life. So you can see there it's quite a dark purple colour. It isn't this intense blue that you're seeing on the camera. But it's really quite unique, this plant. Every single bloom looks completely different, and it's got these speckles and it looks like a night sky. Some of them look more interesting than others. Some of them have like bigger splotches, as you can see on this one here. Other ones, lots of little small ones. And the colours actually change and vary throughout the year, as it does because of the temperature and the seasons. So if the temperatures are quite different in the daytime and the nighttime, so you've got warm days, quite cool nights, what you tend to get is a lot more white in the patterns forming. So you'll get bigger white splotches, and if it's really quite extreme, you can get almost pure white with just kind of purple splotches. But if you have a temperature which is consistently warm, so you've got warm, hot days, also very warm nights, then you get more of a purple colour. So that's why these are more of a purple colour at the moment, because I've had them in my grow box. It's been very cold recently outside in Scotland. It's only about 7 or 8 degrees at the moment, even though it's June. The maximum temperature we're having today, for example, is about 8 degrees. We've just got a very cold, wet period at the moment. So I've kept them inside, but if these were outside, they would have more white on them. They wouldn't have as much purple. Because they've been in the grow box, it has very even temperature, only goes up and down by about 3 or 4 degrees overnight and daytime. So these have got much more predominantly purple. So I have to say, I really always wanted to find this variety, and it's nice to have it. It looks quite surreal. When you look at it, it almost looks like a little portal into space or something. It really does look like a night sky. As I say, there's no other variety I've seen like this. So when I saw it announced a couple of years ago, I really did want to try and get my hands on some. So I have now, so I'll plant them up. And these are just going to be going on the balcony. I'm going to have one on the drain pipe. I was thinking of maybe having all 3 in the drain pipe, but I've already got some plants that have survived the winter. A couple of geraniums, so they're going to be staying there. So I've only got space for 1 on the drain pipe. But the other 2 are going to be hanging over on the front of the balcony in some of the hanging pots. So the compost I'm going to be using is quite a rich multi-purpose compost. They're petunias after all, so what they want is compost which is quite loose, quite free draining as well. But because they're going to be on a hanging basket kind of style pot, they will also need to be watered a lot. Otherwise I'm going to be having problems with moisture, because there's not a big pot for how big the plants will eventually get. So I haven't put too much perlite in. I put a little bit of perlite to keep it loose and free draining, but I don't want to put too much perlite in, because then the compost can't hold as much water, and I'll have to be watering it more than once a day. I can normally only water twice a day maximum, but normally just once. So if I put too much perlite, although it's good for the plants, it'll be quite healthy, the watering will become more difficult. So this is a good kind of mixture for me. It's going to give a bit of free draining, keep it nice and loose with that perlite, but it's not too much perlite that I'm going to have to be worrying about watering constantly. And another note about these plants, these are semi-trailing plants. So they're not like a trailing plant where they naturally grow down. These ones, they actually grow across, and then just the weight of their stems eventually will cause them to come down. So that's why they're semi-trailing. They'll kind of come out and slowly trail down. They won't be like coming right down the edge of the pot like lobelia would. They'll come out a little bit to the side and then trail down under their own weight. A bit like possibly some of the trailing fuchsias. So that'll be nice. It'll just kind of come over at the front of my balcony. So that's the petunias all planted up now. So when it comes to looking after petunias, they are quite easy plants to look after. What will produce better flowering is if you can put them in a really sunny position. They're plants that like a lot of heat, a lot of sunshine. So a nice hot position. If you're living in the tropics, you might want to give them a little bit of shelter from the harshest of sun. But I'm here in Scotland, the summers aren't too hot, so the more sun and the more heat I can give this, the better. They are tropical plants, they don't like cold weather or damp weather, so hot, dry conditions generally what they like the most. The more sunshine the better as well. Also, they're quite hungry feeders, they like a lot of feed, so I'm going to be feeding these with tomato feed. Tomato feed is quite good for bedding plants and petunias in general because it's high in potassium and low in nitrogen, so that will encourage lots of flowering and less of the leaves. And with the petunias, sometimes they go in waves of flowering, so you'll get a lot of flowers and then they'll die back a bit and they'll produce some more leaves and then some more flowers. What tends to happen is if they've been in a pot for too long, that's too small, they're not been fed enough, such as this one possibly is a good example, is you get a lot of growth like this where there's lots of flowers and not many large leaves. If you start to give them a bit more feed or give them a larger pot, they'll produce some more leaves and then they won't run out of energy so quickly. Because what can happen is they'll produce lots of flowers, not many leaves, and then they'll just kind of run out of energy. You can always reinvigorate them by cutting them back, encouraging some new growth. So I'll be giving these feed probably every week, I reckon, with tomato feed once they're up and going. Just for now though, because they've just been transplanted and it's quite a rich compost that I put them in, it's a rich multi-purpose compost, I won't be feeding them for the first couple of weeks. I'll put them out tomorrow because the weather is going to warm up here in Scotland. We're going to have about 16 degrees for the next few days, which will be much better than the 8 degrees that we're having today. But it'll still be quite cool at night, probably about 10 degrees, maybe a bit lower. So these will probably start changing colour a bit more white, I would expect. But with such low temperatures during the day as well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Looking online, it says for the most white, you need high temperatures in the day, low at night. So I'm not sure what happens if it's low in the day and low at night. That'll be interesting to see what kind of colours we get. And also with it to go more purple, you need the high temperatures in the day and the high temperatures at night. So we'll see. I'm expecting to go more white though, with the patterning on the petals. So what I'm going to do now is a bit of deadheading. Deadheading is also very good with petunias. A lot of people don't deadhead them because they just see these little flowers and they just kind of naturally fall off after a while. But if you do deadhead, it does encourage more flowers to come. Some varieties self-seed more than others. So if you've got some of the double varieties, they don't self-seed as much. Deadheading isn't quite as important for them. But generally with petunias, I always do recommend deadheading. So what you want to do, some people just pick off the dead petals like that, but that doesn't do any kind of benefit apart from it looks slightly nicer. Because what you've got here is the old flower. I'm just going to cut it off where it meets the stem there. And the old flower, inside it will start producing seeds. There's a little tiny seed capsule just starting to form. That's the little lump just in the middle there. So you can see that little lump just in the middle poking up. That's the seed capsule just there. And that seed capsule, it'll put the energy into that instead of flowering, because that's what it wants to do eventually, is it wants to set seed and produce new plants. But what you want to do is keep cutting off the flowers after they've finished, and that will encourage the plant to put out more flowers because it thinks it's not going to set seed and it needs to send out more flowers to try and get more seed production. So I'm just going to go over now and take all the dead flowers off. Another thing of note is that the old flowers look very similar to the new flowers. So one way of checking and knowing which is which is check where they are on the stem. So we can see here on this side, this is a new flower, for example. It's all kind of rolled up, and here we have an old flower. It also looks very rolled up. They look very similar. It's hard to tell which is which. The way of telling is you follow on the stem, and if there's a flower in front of it that's open, you're pretty much guaranteed everything below that is old. So all these ones coming off the stem, these are all old flowers. If you look on this, there's a rolled up flower here. Ahead of it, there's nothing. It's right on the end of the shoot. But also behind it, there's an open flower. So you know that one's a new flower. So just using that method here, you can see this has an open flower. So everything behind it on this stem needs to be taken off because they're old flowers. If you do, what can be a bit confusing though is sometimes you have a side branch coming off. Do check if you have a side branch coming off, that if that side branch has an open flower further down on it, then the closed flower could be a new one and not an old one. So it's important to do it branch by branch and not just look at it plant by plant. So that will encourage the plants, as I say, to put more energy into new growth instead of just focusing their energy on producing those seeds that we support from the pollinated flowers. So I'm just going to water this now, and I'll give you guys an update in a few weeks' time when it's on my balcony. It should hopefully be growing quite well. The growth will be quite slow until we get some warmer weather here in Scotland. It has been really quite damp and cold recently, and a lot of cloudy weather. So I'm hoping for some good sunny conditions to hopefully bring these flowers on a bit.